1. The Death of Elisa Lam, 2013. In the hazy undercurrent of downtown Los Angeles, there stands a building with a name that whispers through time like a curse: Hotel Cecil. It is no ordinary hotel. Its walls are soaked in decades of despair. Its hallways echo with footsteps of those who checked in but never checked out. Darkness here is not just the absence of light. It breathes. It watches. It waits. In early 2013, a bright-eyed 21-year-old student named Elisa Lam walked into this very hotel, her journal filled with dreams, her heart beating with the thrill of discovery. She was traveling alone from Canada, chasing experience, chasing freedom. But what she found within the faded walls of the Cecil was not adventure, it was oblivion. Elisa Lam never walked out of that hotel. Her body was discovered weeks later, floating lifeless in a water tank on the hotel's rooftop, naked, silent, cold. The mystery of how she ended up there would ripple through the internet like a digital seance. Her final known moments were captured by an elevator surveillance camera in a chilling video that would become infamous. Elisa pressing buttons, frantically hiding in the corner, stepping in and out of the elevator like she was dancing with a shadow only she could see. No one else was visible in the footage, just her. And yet it felt crowded with something unseen. What happened to Elisa Lam inside the Cecil Hotel? Was it mental illness, foul play, a tragic accident, or something darker? Something stitched into the very fabric of that building's cursed history. Step into the story, because in this tale, every hallway leads to a question, and every silence screams. Imagine Los Angeles in 2013, a city of golden promises and neon dreams, but also one of shadows that never sleep. Into this city came Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada, full of wanderlust and wonder, traveling solo for the first time in her life. She was like a fledgling bird, taking flight, determined to explore the world beyond her nest. But Elisa was not a typical tourist. She carried within her a delicate heart and a mind that wrestled daily with bipolar disorder and depression, a struggle she often shared on her Tumblr blog with raw honesty and poetic melancholy. Despite her battles, she remained hopeful, curious, and full of life. On the 26th of January, she checked into the infamous Cecil Hotel, renamed Stay on Main, a towering relic in downtown LA's Skid Row. The area was a mosaic of pain and poverty, home to the forgotten, the lost, and the broken. The hotel itself, with its 700 rooms and dark history, stood like a haunted monolith. Over the decades, it had witnessed at least 16 unnatural deaths, suicides, overdoses, and murders that left behind unanswered questions. It was once a haven for serial killers like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Austrian murderer Jack Unterweger. The very walls seemed to breathe dread, steeped in the ghosts of tragedy. Elisa was originally placed in a shared room on the 5th floor, but her stay quickly turned unsettling. Within just 2 days, her roommates reported bizarre behavior, handwritten notes taped to their beds, reading "Go home" or "Leave now," and Elisa locking the door and demanding passwords to enter. Staff eventually moved her to a private room. Whatever demons she had kept at bay appeared to be stirring. Still, she called her family every day, her voice upbeat and animated, describing her visits to the San Diego Zoo and a quirky LA bookstore called The Last Bookstore. To others, she was just a cheerful young woman chasing stories. But on the 31st of January, the day she was meant to check out and head to Santa Cruz, the phone went silent. Her parents, panicked by the sudden silence, contacted the LAPD. Officers searched her room and questioned hotel staff. K-9 units swept the building, even the rooftop. But there was no sign of Elisa. It was as though she had evaporated into the walls. Her belongings, including her laptop, were still in the room untouched. Then, on the 13th of February, police released a piece of footage that would ignite a storm across the internet. It was elevator surveillance video from the night of her disappearance. In it, Elisa is seen wearing a red hoodie, stepping into the elevator, pressing multiple buttons in a hurried, almost frantic manner. The doors refuse to close. She peeks out into the hallway, jumps back, and hides in a corner. She steps out, flailing her arms, as if arguing with someone no one can see. Her movements are jerky, strange, like a puppet yanked between panic and confusion. There's no one else visible in the footage, but it feels crowded with an unseen presence. Millions watched, horrified and hypnotized. Was Elisa running from someone, talking to a ghost, or spiraling into a manic episode? Theories spread like wildfire, some plausible, others terrifyingly strange. People spoke of the Korean elevator game, a supposed ritual that opens a portal to another dimension. Others whispered of possession's secret experiments, a stalker hidden just out of frame. The mystery only deepened. But the horror reached its peak on the 19th of February, when hotel guests began complaining of strange-tasting water, low pressure, and black, foul-smelling liquid flowing from their taps. A maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, climbed onto the rooftop to check the hotel's 4 massive water tanks. One of the lids was open. Inside floated the naked body of Elisa Lam, lifeless face, up her clothing, and belongings drifting beside her like ghostly remnants. The revelation was nauseating. For weeks, guests had unknowingly brushed their teeth, showered, and drunk water laced with decay. The hotel was thrown into chaos. To retrieve Elisa's body, firefighters had to cut into the tank, an act that felt more like tearing open a wound than performing a rescue. An autopsy later concluded her death was accidental, drowning exacerbated by her bipolar disorder. No drugs or alcohol were found in her system. No signs of sexual assault or physical trauma, but toxicology revealed Elisa hadn't been taking her full dose of prescribed medications. She may have suffered a psychotic episode. Her family, devastated, confirmed that Elisa had previously exhibited extreme paranoia when off her meds, once hiding under a bed, convinced she was being hunted. Perhaps in her final hours, she imagined a threat so vivid, so terrifying, that she fled upward away from the world, scaled the fire escape to the roof, and climbed into the water tank, seeking refuge. Perhaps she removed her clothes in an attempt to stay warm or lighten the burden as she tried to escape the freezing water. But the tank, cold and metal and merciless, closed in around her like a trap. Still, questions refused to die. How did she get onto a locked rooftop? How did she open a 20-pound metal lid by herself? Where was her phone? Why did the elevator act so strangely that night? Was it truly a tragic accident, or something more sinister? Something that feeds on vulnerability. Online sleuths continued digging. Conspiracies festered. One even targeted a death metal musician named Pablo Vergara, whose online persona was misinterpreted by internet mobs. He was falsely accused of murdering Elisa and harassed so relentlessly that he attempted suicide. The internet's obsession had spiraled into cruelty. But behind all the speculation, one truth remains. Elisa Lam was a young woman, brilliant, sensitive, creative, struggling to stay afloat in a world that often drowns the vulnerable. She sought freedom, adventure, meaning. What she found instead was a place that devours the forgotten. A place that wears darkness like a second skin. The Cecil Hotel didn't kill her, but it didn't save her either. Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles with wide eyes and a restless heart, eager to explore the world beyond her own. She walked into the Cecil Hotel like someone stepping into a maze, carved by fate, where light and shadow dance on the same floor, and dreams often blur into nightmares. Her death ruled an accidental drowning, left behind more questions than answers, like echoes trapped in the hotel's aging walls. There were no ghosts, no killers, only a fragile mind lost in the storm of itself, overwhelmed by forces no one else could see. The Cecil Hotel still stands in the heart of the city, silent and watchful like a monument to forgotten tragedies. Each window feels like an unblinking eye holding secrets too heavy to speak. And Elisa's story, a young woman who vanished into silence only to return as a mystery that gripped the world, has become a somber legend, written not with ink, but with fierce sorrow and the unshakable weight of the unknown. 2. The disappearance of D.B. Cooper, 1971. Imagine a man who walks into an airport with the calm of a ghost and the confidence of a storm. He is dressed in black, polished, precise, like a shadow in human form. He buys a ticket with cash, lights a cigarette like he's lighting a fuse, and waits. It's the 24th of November, 1971, Thanksgiving Eve, and a Boeing 727 waits on the tarmac in Portland, Oregon, oblivious to the legend it's about to carry. He calls himself Dan Cooper, but history will know him as D.B. Cooper, Skyjacker Phantom Mystery Man. In a world obsessed with surveillance and certainty, he remains a breach in the system, a man who simply vanished into the night with a parachute, $200,000 in ransom money, and not a single trace left behind. No motive, no body, no closure. Just questions that echo louder with time. Tonight, we unravel one of the most baffling unsolved crimes in American history. A tale that begins at cruising altitude and descends into myth. Who was D.B. Cooper? And how did he disappear so completely, so perfectly, as if the sky itself conspired to keep his secret? Let us rewind time to that fateful afternoon in Portland, Oregon, where the sky hung heavy with the weight of an impending storm, the clouds like bruises on the face of the heavens. A man in his mid-40s, dressed in a neatly pressed black suit, a dark tie, sharp as a blade, and a face devoid of urgency, stepped onto Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 as if walking onto a stage. He called himself Dan Cooper, a name as ordinary as a whisper, yet beneath it simmered a plan as volatile as dynamite. Tucked inside his black attaché case was not paperwork, but allegedly a bomb, a silent threat wrapped in wires and batteries, a monster coiled and waiting. He sat quietly in seat 18C, a lone wolf cloaked in calm among a flock of unsuspecting sheep, his eyes scanning the cabin with the cold calculation of a predator. As the aircraft soared into the gray abyss, engines howling like war drums, Cooper leaned over and handed a small note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner, his voice low, smooth, and grave like the sea kissing a cliffside. "Miss, you'd better read this," he murmured. The note read like a death sentence. "I have a bomb. Do exactly as I say, and no one will get hurt." Her pulse pounded like a funeral drum as she glanced into his case, tangles of red wires, cylindrical shapes, the lurking grin of chaos itself. But Cooper did not tremble. He remained as composed as a still lake beneath a frozen moon. His demands were precise: $200,000 in unmarked bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. Refuse, and he'd ignite the sky. The plane, now a metal prisoner under his control, descended into Seattle's blood-red sunset like a bird, guided by an unseen hand. Panic rippled through the passengers, yet Cooper orchestrated the chaos like a maestro, allowing all 36 passengers to disembark in exchange for the ransom crisp bills, meticulously numbered by the FBI, and the parachutes, wings for a legend in the making. The remaining crew, hostages to history, watched as the man with the storm in his eyes prepared for the second act. He ordered the plane to take off again, this time bound for Mexico City under bizarre conditions, fly no higher than 10,000 feet at the sluggish pace of 170 knots with the aft stairway left unlocked. A chilling wind whispered through the fuselage as the night deepened, thick, wild, and wet with rain. Somewhere around 8:13 p.m., above the rugged wilderness of southwestern Washington, Cooper rose from his seat. He tied the sack of money to his body like a warrior donning his final armor, fastened the parachute like Icarus strapping on waxen wings, and moved toward the rear stairs, his silhouette swallowed in turbulence and darkness. The door opened with a groan, the wind screaming like death itself, and then he vanished. No farewell, no scream, no shadow, just the night, wrapping him in its silent embrace. The plane, now emptier than its own echo, flew on. What followed was the largest manhunt in American history. The FBI, armed with helicopters, boots, and bloodhounds, scoured the forests near Ariel, Washington, a landscape of towering pines and silent rivers that kept their secrets buried under frost and fog. No Cooper, no parachute, no body. He had evaporated, leaving behind only questions and the perfume of myth. Then, in 1980, like a ghost reaching out through time, a young boy named Brian Ingram stumbled upon $5,800 buried in the sands along the Columbia River bills with serial numbers that matched the ransom. But the money, like bones of a vanished god, only deepened the mystery. Did Cooper survive the jump? Was he a criminal genius who slipped the noose, or a desperate soul claimed by the storm? Over the years, more than 1,000 suspects were considered, from seasoned paratroopers like Robert Rackstraw, whose grin hinted at secrets too heavy to speak to Sheridan Peterson, a former Boeing employee, with a penchant for skydiving and disappearing acts. Yet, none fit the puzzle entirely. Each suspect was a ghost wearing a borrowed mask, a note played out of tune. Letters arrived at newspapers, filled with cryptic ciphers and taunting tones, as if Cooper himself were watching, laughing from beyond the veil. How did he know the 727's rear stair could be deployed mid-flight? Where did he learn to fall from the heavens? Or was he just a madman chasing immortality through the clouds? The forests of Washington, with their mossy stillness and shadowed cliffs, guard his truth like an ancient spell, refusing to yield. Some say he perished that night, swallowed by trees, and time his parachute shredded, his dreams shattered. Others believe he thrived, changed his name, changed his face, and now perhaps sips coffee in a quiet town, smirking whenever the name D.B. Cooper is whispered like folklore on a passing breeze. More than 5 decades have passed since that stormy evening, when a man stepped through the rear door of Flight 305 and disappeared into the cold embrace of the northwest sky. He left behind no footprints, no fingerprints, only a name that may not be his, a legend carved from silence, and a question mark too heavy for history to lift. The world has changed. Planes now carry cameras and security tighter than vaults. But the mystery of D.B. Cooper remains untouchable. Suspended in time like a freeze frame no one can unblur. Was he a criminal mastermind? A desperate veteran chasing one last thrill? Or something more elusive? An idea, a symbol of rebellion against the machine? Every theory adds a layer to his myth, but none peel away the truth. Somewhere, perhaps in a quiet town, an old man may still smile when he hears his name whispered like a spell, D.B. Cooper. Or perhaps the forest swallowed him and the sky claimed what it gave birth to. One thing is certain, he didn't just vanish. He became immortal. And if this tale has stirred something within you, a craving for the untamed and the unexplained, then subscribe and follow us deeper into the forgotten corners of the world where mystery still breathes and legends never die.